This is your girl, Kimberly Harris. Welcome to the Bitter Greens podcast. This week's question is, are you busy or are you productive? And I'm going to invite you guys into a little bit of my life. I have really taken the time this week to evaluate how I move. And what I mean by that is that I decided to take myself on a date on Saturday. And a part of this date, and me going out on dates by myself is not new. I can do pretty much, anything alone. I love company. Don't mistake that. But I also love being by myself. And so I had some work to do and a little bit of cabin fever, trying to be safe in the pandemic as well. And so I thought, hey, what can you do that's outside of the house that you can be productive? And so what I came up with was go to a winery. And there's a newer local winery in Brandywine, Maryland called Jane Mart. And I actually was pleased with the wines that I tasted. They had enough of a selection where I definitely would go back, and I purchased a bottle. But the idea was for me to go to the winery, take my laptop, enjoy some of the outside and the scenery. I love the fall, and really be in a space where I can get some things done, and it breaks up the monotony of being home, and it's also social distancing. So I thought I had it all figured out. So I get to the winery and they sit me in the front near the live entertainment. I have my work bag, I have 2 laptops, 1 cell phone, and then I have my to-do list, which is a notebook, and then I have my ideas notebook, and then I have my notes notebook. I know, overkill, right? And then, I ordered a flight because they're doing flights instead of in tasting room tastings. And so now they come in these little plastic containers. They label the wine, and then you get to do your own tasting by looking at the tasting note sheet. And in this case, they allowed you to either purchase a wine glass or bring your own. And so I brought my wine glass. I got all this stuff, right? I found myself staring at this blank white screen, which I was supposed to get my thoughts onto paper. My wine glass is to the right of me, and I got the wine that I'm supposed to be tasting to the left of me. I am bopping my head to the music, just in a space where my attention was extremely divided. And I thought in a moment, why are you doing this? I am notorious for cramming too many things in a space, all for the sake of maximizing productivity. But the question is, am I busy or am I productive? Or am I just wasting time in terms of trying to multitask? I closed my computer and was like, you know what? I'm going to be in the moment. I'm going to enjoy this wine. I'm going to enjoy this music. I'm going to enjoy this crisp fall air. It was nice, and I needed to enjoy it. So, I did that. That question was, are you busy? Are you productive? Or are you wasting time? And there was an article that I read, I think it was on Psychology Today or, another website. I'm not quite sure, but it was talking about how our brains are not really wired for multitasking. We are more wired to monotask. We're less productive when we're multitasking. And so this particular article was talking about a study that they did where they had a person multitasking and wanted to see how much time they were spending on a task and if they were more efficient. In this particular case, the participants took longer to complete 2 tasks at the same time than they would if they just did one of the tasks at a time. And so they found that they were really wasting time and being less efficient by multitasking. And then there's other articles that suggest that multitasking is beneficial, not necessarily for productivity, but for keeping your brain sharp and you being nimble. And so in my head, when I am multitasking or getting things done that I think are more efficient, that also satisfies me being nimble because I get bored. I get bored doing one task at a time, especially if it's over a long period of time. I need something to break it up. So that's what I'm asking you guys this week. Where do you fall? Are you like me and you cram in too many things at the same time? And then you have divided attention, so you're not at your best at any place, in that situation, whether it's you are on your phone while you're with somebody on a date or you're with your friend, or you are not paying attention to driving because you're texting, or I don't know how many people are like this, but I don't know why I find joy in bringing all the groceries in one trip. I will literally break my arm. I will break my arm trying to make sure that I only take one trip just to get all the groceries in at once. And it's like, score. Why am I happy about that? And so these are the mind games, that I play with myself in terms of just having to break up the monotony because that is just the way that I am. But I do question whether or not I am as productive productive as I could be. And the other part is I do want to be more attentive in the moment. And I joke with my friends about this, like I got a million tabs open on my computer, but oftentimes I also have a million tabs open in my brain and I toggle back and forth. Is that keeping me sharp and giving me some mental agility, or is it really causing more anxiety and stress that may not show up how stress usually shows up, but does, provide some anxiety? The other thing, and I got this from the Health Coach Institute. They were talking about how you do one thing in your life is how you do other things in your life. And I was like, gosh, they're talking about me. And in this particular instance, and I brought this challenge to my group. I've talked to you guys about my women's group, and we do challenges monthly. November's challenge is focused around eating. The first step was to time one of our meals and then look at how long it took us to eat. I'm found out here because just like how I will bulldoze through the day, I found myself doing the same thing in terms of how I eat. You know that it wouldn't be right if I didn't share a movie. On Miss Congeniality, Sandra Bullock has a Chinese food restaurant on speed dial. They recognize her voice. They know what she orders. They often judge her for the amount of food that she orders because it's enough for a small sports team. I totally am parallel to Sandra Bullock and Miss Congeniality, and especially in this part. I have a Chinese food restaurant I go to every Friday. I pretty much order the same thing. I order more food than I need because, girl has to have options, and I have to have leftovers because breakfast the next morning and lunch. The other part, which was the key part here, was that Sandra Bullock ate most of her meals standing up in the kitchen at the sink. And I do that all the time. So when I took the time, and I recommend that you guys do this just to see, what are you taking the time for your meals, or are you bulldozing through them? And my time for my first meal, and I'm ashamed to say this, was greater than 5 minutes, but it was definitely less than 10. And I realized that all my meals were in transition. So if I were going into the office this particular day, I was taking my frittata and my coffee with me, and I was eating it in the car, probably in record time. And that's the same thing with lunch. I was eating lunch while I was on a meeting or on a call, but not necessarily being in the moment and, eating my meal. And then dinner, I had a little bit more time, but it still mostly was standing up in the kitchen. So I'm like, man, all your meals are like this. And the idea is to get your meals to be at least 20 minutes. And this was also from the Health Coach Institute. So the reason why there's 20 minutes is that gives you time. It gives your body time to register that is full. If you eat 1,000 calories in less than 10 minutes, you probably were full at minute 3, but your body just didn't have time to register it. So that's where that 20-minute meal comes in. Also, as a part of this, to help with the 20 minutes, is that you put your fork down at least 3 times within those 20 minutes. So for about 20 to 30 seconds, putting your fork down so you can prolong that meal so that you give yourself time to register as full. And then you should be only eating until you're 80% full. So they were right. I saw the parallel in terms of how I manage my schedule, how I am multitasking on a regular basis with most of the things that I'm doing, not really giving undivided attention. And then the other part of this is I am parallel with how I do my life with how I'm eating. And when we talk about the mind, the body, and the spirit, those things have to be aligned in order for us to operate optimally. It really was just an eye opener for me to see where I can make adjustments. And then some of these adjustments actually came back to boundaries. So when I look at my schedule and I look at my eating habits, or the things that I consume or the things that I do, it came back to boundaries with myself and boundaries with others. And so for the boundaries with myself, as it relates to work, as it relates to my personal life, why am I cramming all of those things into one space? And it came down to, in certain cases, not wanting to say no. And it wasn't necessarily associated with hurting anyone's feelings per se, but just the idea that you usually do it so you could probably get this done. I found myself in a schedule that was at capacity and not understanding why I was tired. So one, saying no to others. If this doesn't fit in my priorities for the week, I'll have to reschedule. And that doesn't mean that I don't want to do the thing. It just means that in order for me to be great at the priorities for the week, I can't do it all because I'm going to be stretched and I'm not going to perform at my max. I'm not going to be able to give it all I got. So that was eye-opening. And then the other part was saying no to myself. You think that getting through these tasks or doing these things are a sport. I'm like, yes, I won the week because I was able to do the 20 things that were in my schedule for the week. But there was some sacrifice involved. Like those were the times I was getting up at 4 a.m. to start work early because I had so many things to do. And I wanted to get my workout in and I wanted to, be able to have these 20-minute meals. Having to say no to myself and being disciplined, getting this adrenaline rush from doing all the things and feeling massively productive is not healthy long term. So say no to yourself and then be disciplined enough that you can say no to the things that are not within those priorities for the week so you can really get everything done and you're not just getting things done just in time. And, so I challenge you guys to, one, look and see what if you're like me. This episode might not be for you if you have a good balance and you don't find joy in having a busy schedule. This episode might not be for you. But if you are like me, take the time to figure out what your priorities are, what is important to you right now. And then are the things that you're doing, and I do this on a daily basis, are you doing in a week's time activities that are aligned with your priorities? And if you're not, what can you take off the table? The second piece is if you are a person who feels guilty when you say no, practice no in a way that's polite, and it's up to you how you do it. For me, depending on who the person is and what it is, I will say, no, I'm sorry, I can't, and leave it there. If it requires more of an explanation as defined by me, then I will provide that additional explanation. I can't do it because I have another priority, which you don't have to get into the weeds about what you're doing and why you can't, because sometimes that also means you'll be talked out of your no. So I have been practicing this week just saying, no, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And it's not because I don't want to. It just really is. I am at maximum capacity and I'm trying to do what it is I need to do that's aligned with my priorities for the week. And then the other part is, how can I reduce multitasking to ensure that I am most efficient, because I do not have the time to waste if I want to accomplish all the things that I have on priorities list. And right now I have 5 priorities, and those priorities include family, my personal goals, God, all of the things. So there are big buckets of 5 priorities. And then under those priorities, I have more specific goals. So it doesn't mean that I'm sacrificing one subset of my life for the sake of another. It just means that the priorities are different and more defined. And you can write these down or you can keep them in your head. But that is what I'm working on this week. And if you guys have some recommendations in terms of how you keep balance, how you remain efficient, how you create boundaries for yourself and others, and then also, how are you stopping and smelling the roses? Because at the end of the day, none of this matters if we're not living. Thank you guys for joining me this week. If you like the podcast, please follow me on Spotify. You can also subscribe on iTunes. I am also on Instagram at bittergreens1. So if you like quotes and want to drop comments about the episodes, you can meet me there. I look forward to talking with you guys next week. Now go win the day. Don't let the day win you.